Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving deep into, how should I put it, a bit of an economic thriller.
A thriller.
Yeah, well, it's got all the elements.
Yeah.
Controversy, a high-profile firing, and a whole nation on edge. We're talking about Germany's economic future and the heated debate sparked by none other than the former finance minister, Christian Lindner.
Oh, this is going to be good. Everyone's talking about this.
Right. Lindner released this, let's call it a strongly worded policy paper that basically ripped into the government's economic strategy, kind of like a public breakup letter.
Ouch. And to make it even juicier, Chancellor Olaf Scholz ended up firing him.
Talk about drama. But the thing is, Lindner's paper didn't just disappear with him. It's ignited this huge debate about what direction Germany should take. And we've got an extra layer to this story. We're going to look at Lindner's ideas, but we also have analysis from Olaf Scholz, an AI business consultant who's adding his own, let's say, tech-savvy twist to the whole thing.
Scholz is known for his outside-the-box thinking. It's like Lindner threw a stone into the pond, and Scholz came along with a speedboat.
Exactly. But before we get to all that, we need to set the stage a bit. Now, most people think of Germany as this economic powerhouse. And it is, or at least it has been.
Yeah, made in Germany still carries a lot of weight around the world.
For sure. But the truth is, things aren't all rosy right now. Germany's actually facing some serious economic headwinds.
It's true. Their growth projections are being downgraded, which is a big warning sign.
And Lindner really lays it out in his paper, outlining 5 major challenges holding Germany back. Sluggish productivity, a shrinking workforce, expensive climate policies, not enough investment, and this trend towards global economic fragmentation where everyone wants to go it alone.
And what makes these challenges even scarier is that they're not just temporary problems. We're talking about deep-rooted structural issues, things that are built into the system, like their bureaucracy.
Germany.
Yeah.
Bureaucracy. Shocking.
I know, right? But it's gotten so dense, so convoluted, that it's costing them an insane amount of money. Like, get this, 55 billion euros every year.
That's like flushing a small country's GDP down the drain.
Pretty much. And then there's the whole population problem. Germany's population is aging rapidly. By 2035, they're projected to lose 7 million workers. That's a lot of empty factories.
7 million. That's a huge chunk of their workforce. It really sets the scene for why Lindner's paper is causing such a stir. He's calling for this major Wirtschaftswende, which basically means economic turnaround.
Like hitting the reset button on how Germany does business.
And he's not mincing words with his solutions. He wants a 3-year freeze on all new regulations.
Whoa, imagine that. No new rules for 3 years in a country known for its love of rules.
Then he goes after this tax called the Solidaritätszuschlag.
Ah, yes, the Sole. Now, this is where things get a bit historical for anyone who wasn't following German reunification.
All right, so back in 1990, when East and West Germany reunited, they introduced this tax to help rebuild the former East Germany. It's been around for over 30 years.
And Lindner wants to get rid of it, arguing it's outlived its purpose and is now just burdening taxpayers.
And to top it off, he wants to slash corporate taxes to a flat 25%. It's like he's trying to make Germany the most business-friendly country on the planet.
He's definitely sending a message. He's also taking aim at how Germany does subsidies. Right now, there are lots of targeted subsidies for specific industries or projects. Lindner thinks this approach is inefficient and creates all sorts of economic distortions.
So instead, he's more into broad, market-driven solutions. Less government intervention, more letting the free market do its thing.
Classic free market approach. But where things get really interesting, or some might say controversial, is Lindner's stance on climate policy.
This is where he really ruffled some feathers, right? He basically said Germany's being too ambitious with its climate goals while the rest of the world lags behind.
He wants to scrap the 2045 climate neutrality target, which, by the way, is a whole 5 years ahead of the European Union's target.
He's arguing that Germany going it alone is hurting their economy without really making a dent in global emissions.
It's a bold argument for sure, and it's raised a ton of questions about the costs and benefits of Germany being this green pioneer. But Lindner isn't just stopping at ditching targets. He's also suggesting some pretty unconventional solutions like carbon capture and storage.
And wait for it, even domestic fracking for natural gas. He really wants Germany to diversify its energy sources.
So we've got Lindner shaking things up with his bold, some might say radical, ideas. But now let's bring in Olaf Scholz, our AI expert, who's taken Lindner's ideas and added his own spin.
Because simply scrapping a climate policy isn't a solution, is it? We need an alternative, a way forward. And that's where Coolers comes in.
Coolers agrees with many of the problems that Lindner points out, but he thinks Lindner's solutions are too small scale, not ambitious enough for real change. He's calling for a Germany 4.0, a fully digital, future-proof economy.
He's like, let's not just fix the problems, let's leapfrog into the future.
Exactly. He's got a whole bunch of innovative solutions that he thinks will get Germany back on track, many of them powered by AI and blockchain.
So it sounds like we're in for a wild ride.
Yeah.
From tax reforms to climate solutions to a complete reimagining of the labor market.
Buckle up, because we're about to dive deep into Coolers' vision for Germany's future. It's a pretty bold vision, right? A total tech-driven overhaul of the German economy.
Definitely a lot to unpack there. But before we go full-on sci-fi, let's zoom back in on some of the specific points of contention that came out of Lindner's paper.
Right.
Like his call to just scrap the 2045 climate neutrality target. That's a pretty huge deal, especially for a country that's often seen as a leader on environmental issues.
Yeah, that was a real shocker for a lot of people. I mean, it really highlights this tension that exists everywhere between staying competitive and doing what's right for the planet.
It's a tough balancing act, isn't it?
For sure. You've got people saying Germany has this moral obligation to be a leader on climate change, to set an example, and that ditching these ambitious targets is like going backwards, not just for the environment, but also for the economy in the long run.
Right, because the argument is that investing in green technologies will actually create jobs and boost the economy down the line.
Yeah.
But then you've got people like Lindner saying, hold on, these goals are costing us a fortune and everyone else is just sitting on their hands.
Exactly. Their worry is that Germany's putting itself at a disadvantage by going it alone.
Yeah.
And they're worried about jobs and the economy, of course. It's tough. There are good arguments on both sides.
It really is. Like, how do you balance doing what's right for the planet with, keeping the lights on and people employed? It's not an easy answer.
It's not. It's like trying to walk a tightrope, and you've got economic growth on one side and environmental sustainability on the other. It's tricky.
Speaking of tricky, what about Lindner's proposal to cut back on subsidies for renewable energy? That's caused a stir, especially in a country that's really gone all in on solar and wind power.
Oh, yeah, that one's got people talking. It goes to the heart of the debate about what role the government should play in this whole energy transition. Lindner's argument is that these subsidies have become too expensive and are messing with the free market. He thinks less government intervention would be better.
So he's basically saying, let the market decide which energy sources are the winners and losers. But of course, the folks who support these subsidies are pushing back hard, saying they're absolutely essential for getting renewable energy off the ground and weaning Germany off fossil fuels.
Exactly. They point to the success of those subsidies in creating jobs and boosting the clean energy industry. Their argument is that cutting them off too soon could really stifle innovation.
It's like everyone agrees we need a cleaner energy future, but they can't agree on how to get there.
Right. It's more than just the economics of it. It's about values, too. The folks who are pro-subsidies see it as a moral obligation to invest in clean energy to protect the environment, even if it costs more in the short term.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like a clash of philosophies almost.
It is. And on the other side, you have those who prioritize economic growth and keeping things affordable. Their argument is that a strong economy is what will actually allow us to invest in those clean technologies.
I see what you mean. So it becomes this really complicated question about priorities and values, not just about dollars and cents. But, all right, let's shift gears a bit and talk about another big issue, the labor market. Germany's workforce is shrinking, and Lindner has some pretty strong opinions about how to fix that.
Yeah, this is a huge one. A shrinking workforce impacts everything. And one of Lindner's most controversial ideas is to change social safety net programs like Bürgergeld. The idea is to make working more financially appealing.
So it's like, make sure taking a job always pays more than staying on benefits.
That's the gist of it. But you can imagine this idea has gotten a lot of pushback, especially in Germany, where the social safety net is such a cornerstone of their society.
Yeah, people are worried these changes could lead to more poverty and inequality.
That's the fear. They're saying that these programs are vital, a safety net for those struggling to make ends meet, and that cutting them back would hurt the most vulnerable people the most. They argue Germany already has relatively low levels of income inequality compared to a lot of other developed countries.
They're saying don't mess with the system that's working.
Right. But then you have Lindner and his supporters saying the current system actually discourages people from working.
It's like giving someone a fish versus teaching them to fish, right?
Right.
But it's obviously much more complicated than that.
Exactly. People face all sorts of barriers to finding work. And just cutting benefits isn't a magic solution. And then Lindner also wants to completely change Germany's labor laws, which are known for being pretty rigid. He wants to move to a weekly maximum work hour model instead of a daily one.
So instead of having to work a set number of hours each day,
Hmm.
you could work more on some days and less on others as long as you hit your weekly target.
Exactly. His thinking is that it'd give people more flexibility, which sounds great in theory.
Right. More control over your own schedule. Sounds nice.
But critics are worried that this could lead to employers pushing people to work longer hours, even when they don't want to. It's a classic case of good intentions, but maybe not the best execution.
It's so easy for a policy to sound good on paper, but then have unintended consequences when it hits the real world. Okay, so we've talked about some of the main points of contention in Linder's paper. Now let's bring Elias Couleurs back into the mix. He's got a very different way of looking at these problems, right? He's all about finding innovative solutions, using technology to kind of leapfrog over the old ways of doing things.
Totally. He's not afraid to shake things up and propose some really bold, even radical ideas. And it's refreshing, in a debate that often feels like it's stuck in the same old rut.
And he's especially excited about the possibilities of AI and blockchain. It's like he's saying, hey, we've got these incredible tools. Let's use them to build a better future.
It's more than just being a tech enthusiast. Coolers is all about using tech to empower people and create a fairer system, a more equitable society, and actually solving real problems.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. How does Coolers actually propose to use these technologies to solve some of Germany's economic challenges?
All right, so let's start with his idea of an intelligent regulation moratorium. Now, I know we talked about Lindner proposing a freeze on regulations.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. What's different about Coolers' idea?
So Lindner's approach is more like a sledgehammer, just stopping all new regulations. Coolers is proposing a more targeted, nuanced approach. He wants to use AI to pinpoint the regulations that are outdated, unnecessary, or just overly burdensome. He's not against regulations altogether, he just thinks they need to be smarter.
So instead of hitting pause on everything, he wants to use AI to sort through the mess and get rid of the stuff that's no longer working. It's like cleaning out your closet, but for regulations.
Exactly. And he doesn't stop there. He wants to use blockchain to create a more transparent system where you can track everything in real time, like a public ledger for regulations.
So that's pretty revolutionary, right? Taking a system that's been based on paper and red tape for centuries and making it digital.
That's Coolers for you, always thinking ahead. He's got this deep belief in the power of technology to make things more efficient and trustworthy. Okay, so we've got regulations covered, but what about climate policy? How does Coolers think tech can help decarbonize the economy?
Yeah, because simply getting rid of climate targets isn't going to magically solve the problem. We need a real plan, a way forward.
Absolutely. Coolers is all about using AI to manage this complex transition to renewable energy. He thinks AI can help integrate these new energy sources into the grid, make things more energy efficient, and ultimately cut down on emissions.
So it's about making the whole process smoother and less expensive.
That's the idea. Imagine AI constantly crunching data from the energy grid, analyzing weather patterns, tracking energy consumption, and then using all that information to optimize the flow of electricity.
It's like having a super smart energy manager working 24/7.
Exactly. AI could predict when and where renewable energy will be available, even adjust energy prices in real time to encourage people to conserve energy. Think about it. It could even control smart appliances in our homes to reduce peak demand. Pretty cool, right?
It's mind-blowing. But Colores doesn't just want to make the system smarter. He wants to make it more democratic. He's talking about using blockchain to make it easier for people to trade renewable energy credits.
Exactly. This would allow individuals and businesses to participate directly in the clean energy market. Imagine selling your excess solar power from your roof to your neighbor.
It's like creating this peer-to-peer energy marketplace.
That's it. And it fits perfectly with his overall vision of using technology to give people more control. Okay, so regulations and climate policy are on the table. What about everyone's favorite topic? Taxes.
Ah, taxes. Can't live with them, can't live without them. What kind of tech magic does Coolers have up his sleeve for this one?
He's got this idea called dynamic tax reform, which would use AI to adjust tax rates in real time based on what's happening in the economy.
Wait, so you're saying tax rates would be constantly changing?
That's right. It's like a self-driving tax system. The goal is to make the system more responsive. So if the economy is booming, rates might go up a bit to cool things down. If the economy is slowing, rates could go down to encourage growth. It's about finding the sweet spot where taxes aren't hindering economic activity.
That's a big shift from how we usually do things, where tax rates are set by politicians and can stay the same for years, even if the economy's going haywire. But how would you even do that? It sounds crazy complicated.
Well, that's where AI comes in. Coolers thinks we can have AI constantly looking at economic data, things like GDP growth, inflation, unemployment rates, and based on all that, the AI would recommend changes to tax rates.
So it's like having this super smart economist constantly fine-tuning the system.
You got it. It's taking the politics out of taxes and letting the data decide. Of course, people might freak out if their taxes were constantly changing. Transparency would be key, making sure people understand how the system works and why their rates are fluctuating. And that's where blockchain comes in again. Coulor suggests using it to make the tax system super transparent and secure.
So blockchain for taxes, how does that work?
Imagine a system where every single transaction is recorded on this super secure blockchain. It'd make it way harder for people to cheat on their taxes because every little thing would be visible to the tax authorities.
It's like a permanent, unchangeable record of every financial move you make. But wouldn't that be a total invasion of privacy, giving the government access to all our financial data?
That's a valid concern. Coulors thinks we'd need strong privacy protections built in. For example, maybe the tax authorities can only see the data they need to verify your tax return, not your entire financial history.
Okay, so it's about finding that balance between transparency and keeping people's information private.
Yeah.
So we've covered regulations, climate, and taxes. What about the workforce? What does Coulors have in mind for the German people?
Remember how Lindner wants to encourage people to work by reforming social safety net programs and making the labor market more flexible? Well, Coulors is on board with some of those goals, but he thinks we need to go even further.
So what's his grand plan?
He calls it Smart Work Deutschland, and the idea is to use AI to make the whole work experience better, from finding a job to managing your schedule.
So it's about making the workplace adapt to people's needs, not the other way around.
Right. He sees AI helping people find jobs that actually match their skills and interests. Imagine work schedules that are flexible and customized to fit your life. And easy access to training programs so workers can keep up with the changing job market. It's all about using technology to create a work environment that's actually human-centered.
That's a pretty powerful idea.
Yeah.
Using tech to make work more human, more fulfilling.
Exactly. And he's got this other cool idea about using blockchain to track skills and credentials.
So it's like a digital resume that follows you wherever you go.
Exactly. No more digging through old files or trying to remember when you took that training course. It would make it so much easier to switch jobs or even industries. Show off your skills and find opportunities that are a perfect match.
That's like a digital passport for your talents.
Yeah.
Okay, we're almost out of time for this segment, but we've got to talk about the pension system. This is a massive issue in Germany, especially with the population aging. What's Coulor's take on this?
He's not shying away from the problem, that's for sure. He's calling for a total revamp of the system. He calls it Pension 4.0, and it's all about using AI to create personalized retirement plans. It's like having your own AI retirement advisor, helping you make smart decisions about saving and investing.
So it's like customized financial planning tailored to each person's situation.
Exactly. The AI would look at your age, income, risk tolerance, life expectancy, all that stuff to create a plan just for you. And of course, Coulors wants to bring blockchain into the mix to make the whole pension system more transparent and secure. Imagine being able to track your pension contributions and see exactly where your money's going.
That would be a game changer, especially for younger folks who aren't so sure they'll even see a pension when they retire.
Right. It's about giving people confidence in the system and control over their financial future. So we've covered a lot of ground today. Lindner's proposals have definitely shaken things up, but then Coulors comes in with these super innovative ideas. It's clear Germany's at a crossroads, trying to decide what its economic future looks like. What do you think? Are these challenges unique to Germany, or are other countries facing similar issues?
I think a lot of what Germany is dealing with are actually global problems. We're all seeing these trends, aging populations, technology disrupting everything. climate change, and a global economy that's more interconnected than ever. The solutions might look different in each country, but the core challenges are the same.
So Germany is kind of like a test case for the rest of the world.
In a way, yeah. And it's important to watch how they respond because there are valuable lessons to be learned. What policies work, what technologies are most promising. We can all learn from their successes and failures. It's like they're conducting a giant experiment and we all get a front row seat. So we've got these two contrasting visions for Germany's future. Lindner's more traditional, fiscally conservative approach, and then Coulour's with his radical, tech-driven solutions. What do you think, which path is Germany more likely to take?
That's the million-dollar question. It's way too early to tell. Lindner's paper has definitely gotten people talking, but he's not in government anymore. It really depends on what the German people want, the political climate, and what's actually doable in the current economic situation.
It's not a simple equation. There's so many factors at play.
Exactly. It's more about watching how this whole debate unfolds, what ideas gain traction, and how the government responds. It's like a political thriller in real time.
A thriller with potentially global consequences.
Exactly. It's a good reminder that the future isn't set in stone. We all have a role to play in shaping what's to come.
It's a call to action, right? Stay informed, get involved in these discussions, and fight for the future we want.
Absolutely. And even when things look tough, it's important to remember that there's always hope. We've got the tools and the smarts to create a better future.
Okay, before we wrap up, I want to go back to something we touched on earlier. This tension between staying competitive and being environmentally responsible. It seems like this is at the heart of so much of the debate we're seeing today. Do you think we can have both, a strong economy and a healthy environment?
I think it's not just possible, it's absolutely necessary. This old way of thinking where economic growth and protecting the environment are at odds, it just won't work in the long run. We have to find ways to decouple those two things, to grow without destroying the planet.
So how do we do that? What are some concrete steps Germany, or any country for that matter, can take to get there?
It starts with understanding that environmental protection isn't just a cost, it's an investment. When we invest in clean energy, sustainable infrastructure, resource efficiency, it actually creates jobs, boosts the economy, and makes our lives better.
So it's about changing our mindset, seeing it as an opportunity, not a burden.
Right. And we can't forget that this requires global cooperation. Climate change doesn't care about borders. It's a problem that affects us all, and we need to work together to solve it. Sharing knowledge, resources, working together to create a sustainable future for everyone.
It's like that saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
I love that. It really captures what we need to do. We have to work together, be innovative, and find a way forward that's good for both people and the planet.
It's inspiring to see someone like Coulour's approaching these problems with so much optimism and creativity. He's not just pointing fingers. He's coming up with solutions. And they're not just your run-of-the-mill ideas. They're exciting, innovative, cutting edge.
He's definitely a breath of fresh air, not afraid to think big, challenge the status quo, and embrace what technology can do.
And what I really appreciate is that it's not just about the tech itself. It's about using technology to empower people, build a more inclusive society, and actually solve real-world problems.
He's not just a tech geek, he's a humanist. He sees technology as a tool for good.
So we focused on Germany, but I think the bigger question is, what can the rest of the world learn from all of this?
That's a great question. One of the key takeaways is that these challenges aren't unique to Germany. It's a global story. We're all dealing with aging populations, technology changing everything, climate change, and a global economy that's more interconnected than ever.
So Germany's like a preview of what's coming for everyone else.
In a way, yeah. And we can all learn from their experience, see what works and what doesn't, which policies are effective, what technologies have the most potential. It's like a giant experiment, and we get to see the results in real time.
So what's the key takeaway for our listeners today? What do you hope they walk away with?
I hope they walk away with hope. The challenges are big, but they're not impossible to overcome. We have the tools, the knowledge, the creativity. It's not going to be easy. It'll take a lot of effort and cooperation, but I think we can do it.
It's easy to get caught up in all the doom and gloom, but we have to remember that we have choices. We can shape our own future.
Exactly. And that starts with staying informed, participating in these conversations, and speaking up for the kind of world we want to live in.
So for those who want to dive deeper into all of this, where should they go? What resources would you recommend?
I highly recommend checking out the work of Olaf Scholz. He's a brilliant mind and a true visionary. You can find his website online, and he's pretty active on social media. He's definitely worth following.
And of course, we'll have links to articles and reports in the show notes for those who want a deeper dive into the German economy.
And don't be afraid to do your own research. Explore different viewpoints, form your own opinions. The more informed we are, the better decisions we can make about the future.
Well said. And on that note, it's time to wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us today. It's been a fascinating conversation.
The pleasure was all mine. Always happy to talk about these important issues.
We'll be back next week with another deep dive. Until then, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay hopeful.
It really is. It's like we've got Lindner over here saying, let's tighten our belts and double down on what we know. And then you've got Kahlur saying, hey, future is now, let's embrace it.
Almost like two different worlds colliding, the old guard versus the tech revolution. But, what strikes me is that both of them, in their own way, are trying to address the same core issues, right? They both see that Germany needs to adapt, to evolve, to find a way to stay relevant in a rapidly changing world.
Absolutely. They might have different approaches, different solutions, but the underlying goal is the same: to ensure Germany's future success. And that's something I think everyone can agree on.
It's like they're both trying to navigate this uncharted territory, this new economic landscape where the old rules don't necessarily apply anymore. And they're both trying to find the best path forward for Germany.
And it's a path that the rest of the world is watching very closely, I think, because the challenges Germany is facing, those are challenges that many other countries are going to be facing as well. The aging population, the technological disruption, the climate crisis. It's a global story.
So Germany is kind of like a test case for the rest of us,
Yeah.
right? They're the ones on the front lines figuring out how to navigate these turbulent waters.
Yeah.
And the lessons they learn, the successes and the failures, those are going to be valuable for everyone.
Exactly. So it's important to pay attention to what's happening over there, to learn from their experience, to see what works and what doesn't. Because the choices they make today are going to have ripple effects far beyond their borders.
It's like they're holding up a mirror to the rest of the world, showing us what the future might hold. And it's up to us to learn from their experience and to chart our own course.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Germany's economic crossroads, what's the one key message you want our listeners to take away?
I think the most important thing is to remember that the future is not predetermined. It's not something that just happens to us. It's something we create through our choices, our actions, our collective will.
It's about taking ownership of our future.
Exactly. And that means staying informed, engaging in these critical debates, and advocating for the kind of world we want to live in. Because if we don't shape the future, someone else will.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
And for our listeners who are eager to delve deeper into these topics, who should they be following? What resources would you recommend?
Well, we've talked a lot about him today, but I really can't recommend Elias Kahlur's enough. His work is truly groundbreaking. You can find him online. His website is full of insightful articles and analysis, and he's very active on social media as well.
He's definitely someone to watch.
Yeah.
And for those interested in getting a more in-depth understanding of the German economy and the specific policies we've discussed today, be sure to check out the links we've provided in the show notes. There's a wealth of information out there.
And don't be afraid to go beyond what we've covered today. Do your own research. Explore different perspectives. Challenge your own assumptions. The more informed we all are, the better equipped we'll be to make wise decisions about the future.
Absolutely. Critical thinking is more important than ever. Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. A huge thank you to our expert for joining us today and sharing such valuable insights. It's been a truly enlightening conversation.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to discuss these crucial issues.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We hope you found this deep dive informative and thought-provoking. We'll be back next week with another episode exploring a new topic. Until then, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep those critical thinking caps on.